So now we come to, in this section, personal transformation. And this is something that occurs naturally when you are on this path, when you're using your awareness to discover what you are, to see what you are. And you're doing techniques, you're doing meditations, you're learning different ideas and concepts about self-awareness and awareness in general. And personal transformation is how your self changes. And it can be very tangible things like your personal routine and what you do and what you have in life. And it can also be less tangible. It can be more abstract, more like your sense of self, your perception abilities, your feelings, and so on. So personal transformation is very much an important part of this grand path that we walk, and it is very much a matter of changing who you are, and it's something that occurs naturally as you grow, and it is also something that you actively invest in. It's something that you work on. You want to change your life. You need to change yourself. You need to change what you are. So the next few intangible assets are sort of related to, in varying degrees, personal transformation. So now I'd like to say just a little bit about secret feelings. As your awareness becomes heightened, as you get a higher awareness, your psychology becomes less of an indication of where your consciousness is at. And an easy way of understanding this is simply by knowing that you have secret feelings. You have feelings that no one else knows about you. And these are feelings that you can't explain. You can't really talk about. Now, of course, at a certain stage, in a certain way, as a certain approach, it is very powerful to connect your feelings with words. It is very important to know that putting words to your feelings as a way of discovering and making that connection between the mind and the body, the mind and sensation, the mind and feeling, the mind and emotion, then that is something that must be understood and practiced at certain times. And yet, further on, at a different time, in a different way, in a different place, with a different application, you need to be able to actually have feelings that are beyond words. And of course, we mean feelings in a more broad sense. So if we say, normally we talk about feelings, emotions, bodily sensations, and out of those three categories, feelings are their own category. But here we mean feelings as in all categories of the phenomenological experiencing. The feeling of what it means to be you, your feeling of your identity, your feeling of space, your feelings of the body, your feelings as in emotions as well. So we mean feelings in the most broad sense. And really, it's not hard to fathom that as you transcend psychology, as you transcend the mind, then feelings occupy more space outside of that thing that we can call cognition. It occupies more of that mystical sense, that thing that you can't put words to. Now, it's a little bit tricky because you do notice that initially, mysticism is its own isolated feeling. It's actually just one feeling that you get. It's that sense of coming to, and it might be different depending on how you arrive at it, but for example, it could be that thing where you come to a point that you can't describe. You come to this point that is more like awe or dumbfoundedness. And it's a feeling. It's nothing, the words don't come out. Silence comes out. Now, as your feelings that can't be described expands, you'll realize that that is just one feeling. That is a feeling that occurs again and again. And if it becomes solidified, you might actually find that you can put a word to it. You do find a word to it. Whereas secret feelings is always something new. A secret feeling is always beyond words. And there is still a range within that. And really, it doesn't, once you've sort of had this process a number of times, and you've experienced it again and again, and it's happened transformatively again and again, you've transformed your feelings again and again, then you see how there is a range. And you see that the mind really only does occupy a small thing within yourself. The mind becomes much smaller as you have more secret feelings. The mind becomes much smaller as you transform what it is that your self is. And personal transformation is also a matter of personal expansion, which means that what your person is, which includes the mind, has components that become smaller and smaller. And the mind does become smaller and smaller. And an image that I like to have, or a sort of illustration to help sort of convey this, is that if you imagine a bird singing in the forest, and you consider how much as a proportion the sound of that bird is to the rest of the forest. And even we don't even have to go that far. We could just say that the bird itself as a proportion of the rest of the forest, the mass of the bird, the effect the bird has on the environment. It's very small, isn't it? It's almost non-existent by mass, by sound, right? Birds are not very loud. And energetically, it's even less, right? The energy of the sound of the bird compared to the energy of something like the sun, right? The sun has a massive presence on this world. It has a massive power and it's burning energy that reaches us through so much time. And compared to the energy of the sound that a bird makes when it sings, well, that's very small, right? It's microscopic. Not to mention that the sun is a kind of constant, and a bird is fleeting. It's past. And that proportion is the same as to what occurs within you as you open up to feelings that can't be expressed. Feelings that don't have words to them. You become more like a forest. And you experience something that's more like a forest, as vast and as intricate as a forest, that has rivers and trees and the wind blowing and all sorts of birds and animals and the changes of seasons and the colours and the flowers and fruits and poisons and all sorts of occurrences that are so much larger than just the sound of one bird singing. Now, of course, the bird still sings. The mind still talks. But you would never expect someone to understand the beauty of the entire forest by just hearing the sound of one bird singing. If we were to make a recording of the bird sound and then take that recording to someone who's sitting in an isolation area or a more isolated area like an office or a home, and we play that recording, they say, listen to this bird sound. They wouldn't be getting a sense of what the forest is like. Now, if we recorded multiple bird sounds and some of the sounds of the wind in the leaves of the trees and maybe some river flowing water sound, and we were able to do some recording engineering tricks and some audio engineering tricks, and we were to put that into something and construct kind of audio artwork, and then got someone to listen to that on big headphones and they really submerge themselves into a kind of meditation, well, then they would be starting to sense more of what the forest is like. But really, this kind of dialogue that we have, right? This endless chatter or these words that occur within the mind as a train of thought, they really are comparable to the proportion of the bird singing in the forest to the experience of the forest. And your experience, and I'm using experience as in under the category of feelings here in this context, but the experience is so much more vast, and you can quite literally experience the forest. That's the amazing thing about personal transformation. It's that your person expands. Your sense of experience expands. Your sense of feeling expands. So, there's a few other things that can go along with this, which is personal feelings. And this is the more practical side of this and the less poetical side, although the poetical side is very important. First of all, don't expect someone to understand you. Now, we'll leave aside human connection as its own range of dynamics and techniques and understandings for now. But here, when it comes to secret feelings, the approach you take is not expecting anyone to understand. Now, there are a lot of reactions that can come when you start having a lot of secret feelings, especially when they're powerful, especially when they're new and you're doing massive personal transformation. What can happen is such a sense of inspiration that you want to share, right? Because there's this joy, there's this love, there's this overwhelming inspiration. It's an amazing thing to discover. So you want to share, you want to be able to try and convey that to your friends, family, loved ones, and the rest of the world. But here we take secret feelings as an understanding that we take the attitude of not expecting anyone to understand, and not even trying. So this means not preaching. It means not telling others that they also have to have these feelings. They have to have these discoveries for themselves. It also means not expressing yourself. Now, we've talked about art and creativity before, and that can be an amazing journey of having feelings that can't be expressed channeled into the creative act. That's great. But here we take a different approach. This intangible asset accounts for a different part of consciousness, which is not expressing yourself, which means not trying to put words to it in such a way that someone else can understand. It means not going out and doing an artwork in response to it. And you might recognize a certain experience or feeling in a certain way and consciously decide not to create something in response to it. Now, it also means not explaining yourself. Now, an explanation is a self-explanation and also an explanation that you give to someone else. If you could try and explain. And it might be that you have relationships with people who start to sense that you have secret feelings. And this does happen if you've got people who are in your life who are also doing personal transformation and they're aware of higher awareness and consciousness and these sorts of deeper concepts of life. When you have secret feelings, people will become curious. And when you're okay with keeping it to yourself and you're not going out there and preaching and expressing and explaining, then they'll sense it. And here we take this understanding that when they come and say, hey, what's going on? And you say, well, I don't think I can put words to it. And they really do sense it. They say, can you try to explain? Can you make an attempt to explain? Well, then it's okay to say, no, I don't need to explain. It's a private experience. It also means not asking about other people's secret feelings. It also means not sort of wondering, right? There is a component of projection and a kind of misconception about what is in other people when you have secret feelings. Because a secret feeling is entirely personal. It might be that you are the only person who has ever had that feeling. It can be that unique. It can be that intimate. And at that stage, you don't want to ask, hey, has this sort of thing ever happened to you? Of course, you do have to pick your times because that can be a great conversation opener. That can be another way into a deeper dialogue with someone that you love. Has this sort of thing ever happened to you where you can't describe your feelings? And of course, also, you just simply can't assume. And further still, if this is not too solipsistic for what we're working on here, don't expect anyone to understand an intangible asset. How you've understood these intangible assets and how I've explained them, they all, in a way, come under the category as a secret feeling, right? This understanding that we're building here is its own kind of knowledge. It's its own kind of lesson, its own kind of work. So don't expect anyone to understand it. Now, in that, you do also notice that there is a camaraderie that happens between people. There is a sense of connection in that thing of, oh, Do you like this band? Have you ever heard this band? And they have, and they say, yes, I know that band. And then immediately you're becoming best friends. And that's because you have the same feelings. You both know each other's feelings. It's like, what football team do you go for? Oh, we go for the same team. Immediately we're best friends. Immediately we're on the same side. Immediately there's some sort of connection. Now here, secret feelings understand that as a kind of lower consciousness device that's at work. And having secret feelings doesn't mean you become, oh, they don't know me, so I am holier than thou. Don't get up on your high horse, which is another part of this, right? This is not spiritual elitism. It's simply a matter of cherishing what mysticism has come to you. It's cherishing and being reverent towards the mystical experiences that you have and being respectful to them. It's a little bit disrespectful to have a feeling and then to make it known to the world. And it's not, what I'm saying is, it's not disrespectful to the people that you share it with. It might be a beautiful thing, right? Might be a beautiful feeling. But in a sense, it's disrespectful to the feeling as an entity to itself. A beautiful experience needs reverence. It needs respect. It needs, at least for a time, in a certain way, to be kept private. And really, when you open up to the world, you can be absolutely shocked at how far beyond the mind feelings go. And what someone says about themselves when you're in that level of consciousness has nothing to do with where they're at. Right? At a certain level of consciousness, at a certain psychology of being, what you say about yourself, the words that are attached to your identity and your experiences, mean a lot. They reveal a lot. They actually illustrate very well the consciousness that you're living with. But further on in your personal transformation, that becomes less and less of an indication. Which means they can say all sorts of things about their day, week, month, and life. And it is not even the beginning of what they really experience for themselves and what they really feel for themselves. So secret feelings is a very important part of personal transformation. And when you're ready, we can move on into the next talk.